Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who usually do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But sometimes it's December and we have
It's
weird
the holiday season.
And we cover a Christmas movie,
And we're
except
talking about
when we
Fran
don't.
Drescher.
Except sometimes we don't even cover a Christmas movie. Sometimes we just cover Fran Drescher's The Nanny reboot in Eastern
This is
Europe.
essentially The Nanny. They really liked The Nanny, and they were like, you know what would be great? The Nanny plus The Sound of Music.
Well, she was working at a bridal shop in Flushing,
Flushing,
Queens,
Queens,
when her boyfriend kicked her out in one of those crushing
scenes.
scenes. What was she
to
do? Where was she
to
go? She was out on her
on her
fanny.
So she went after a Russian guy.
Who's definitely a dictator. She was there to teach makeup, but a random guy saw more.
She was there to teach science.
I thought you taught science. I'm gonna call you Ira.
Oh my gosh. I will say, I honestly maybe have too much love for Fran Drescher. Because she was incredibly charming in this movie. It's not the greatest movie, but I really enjoyed it because Fran was just so funny and charming.
So
and,
first of all, everyone, we have to say that
I love it.
We haven't even mentioned the name of this movie.
Oh, whoops.
So we're covering The Beautician and the Beast, which is a 1997 American romantic comedy starring Fran Drescher as the nanny. It's just the nanny in Czechoslovakia, pretty much, where she accidentally gets hired, where she thinks she's going to be teaching makeup, I guess. I don't know why she didn't ask more questions, but really
strange. So she's a teacher at like a beauty school. And there's like a fire, and she's quoted as being a really great teacher in
She's a great teacher who happens to be teaching beauty school in a like high school at night. Like it's like a night school that I don't even know if it's a high school, but it doubles as
like a beauty school program though.
It's a beauty school program, but if you notice, there are animals there because it's also doubling as a science room. So it's like a night school that has different types of classes in it. And she happens to be teaching beauty school when one of her students sets the room ablaze.
Maybe I thought it was a little more morbid than it
actually
is, because I was thinking it was like animal testing, that they're testing makeup on animals.
No, that's not it. They weren't testing animals. Like it was supposed to be a room that doubled. So it is like an actual classroom, which is why there was. I've watched this movie so many times. Like if you for listeners, my history with this movie, because we usually ask this, but we're just like so chaotic energy today. Laura has to edit this video tonight, so good luck. So my history with this movie is there are certain movies I had in my lifetime that I called cross-stitching movies because I took a lot of cross-stitching 4-H projects, and I always procrastinated them because I have ADHD. And so during the summer, I would have to just like sit for hours a day cross-stitching to finish my project like by a specific date. And so there were certain
night before.
Yeah, pretty much like you're like, my mom's like, we have to get it into the person who like puts it into a frame like 2 weeks before the 4-H show. I'm like the night before, like not sleeping, staying up until 2 a.m, putting beads on a woman walking.
Man, that sounds familiar.
So this is one of my cross-stitching movies where I had seen it so many times that you could just put it on and then you didn't have to look at the screen. You just knew what was happening in your mind.
Such as me with Parks and Rec in the background all the time.
Exactly. And so things like Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, the Kate Beckinsale Emma where she screams, "But what about little Henry?" All of these really weird movies that you hear me mentioned way too often fall into this very specific Hannah cross-stitching movies, to the point where this week on Movie Grid, Christopher Walken popped up as one of the actors who had to name movies from 2000 to 2024. And Laura, I've never been more angry at you because I picked that stupid Bears movie because I knew he was the
Country Bears?
Yeah, I was like, oh, well, he was in the Country Bears. And I was like, well, that makes me mad. And then I remembered that he was in the Stepford Wives. And I was like, that also makes me mad that this is the Christopher Walken I'm pulling. And then
I like that one too. And Hairspray was probably close to that time. I have watched a lot of excellent Christopher Walken
So I didn't
properties.
think of Hairspray. You want to know what I did think of? Sarah Plain and Tall, number
Oh yeah,
one and
yeah, yeah. I watched that
three.
too
Yeah,
with
because
Glenn Close.
I watched so many of those. And then I texted my sister-in-law and I was like, I'm so angry that these are my Christopher Walken polls because this is absolute horseshit on a screen that those are my Walken polls. I didn't think of Hairspray. I didn't think of many other Christopher Walken joints. I thought of Sarah Plain and Tall. And then she
I think
found out
that's a
that
good one.
she found out that that's a trilogy, and I was like, I've seen that many times. And she said, Hannah, that is not shocking information. So,
You know what? It kind of fits. Like,
yeah.
honestly, when I started watching this movie, it was making me the Beautician and the Beast. When I started watching this, it was making me laugh a lot just because I was like, so many things just like the dots are connecting with Hannah's childhood. Like it just makes me laugh because I'm just like Hannah and I, when was this that I went to your house recent it wasn't recently, but within the past 5 years or so, and
Yeah.
we went up in your childhood bedroom and you had all of these American Girl doll things that we were reading through.
The American Girl doll trading cards.
Yes. And those were bizarre.
Those are so upsetting.
Oh my gosh, they are terrible. But it's like all of these things just kind of fit together. And the Beautician and the Beast, I was just like, you know what? It also fits. And then Hannah, you know what? I did a little digging on the Beautician and the
Oh.
Beast, and the director is Ken Kwapis, and I immediately recognized that name because Ken Kwapis is often mentioned on the Office Ladies podcast because he's
Oh.
director on The Office.
He
But
directed He's Just Not That
he
Into
directed
You.
He's Just Not That Into You, Hannah. So you have been connected to this man
From my childhood.
from
Oh,
your childhood.
this is the darkest timeline. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm a
And
huge
he
Ken
also went to
Kwapis fan.
Northwestern. So
Mm. He and I have been
several
circling each
connections.
other. I also remember loving Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants movie.
I liked that one as well.
A movie where they tried to convince us that again, America Ferrera, super fat. It's like she's a
What?
size
Yeah.
8. Like, can we
Not
not?
convinced, but okay.
Um, so yeah, this movie was well within my childhood, and as you have found out, Laura had never seen this movie and did not know it existed until I
Yes.
talked about it on the podcast, but was
And it
very
is
excited to watch
literally
it.
impossible to find. Like I was searching eBay and there's like only VHSs of it. And I was like, I don't trust my VHS player
Mm.
to not tear up something.
I feel like
So
I bought it off of Amazon or something because I streamed
did
it
you?
somehow.
Well, I
Uh,
ended up streaming it on
okay,
Amazon. You can rent the movie, which
yeah,
is what I did, and it was on discount. So
that's shocking
not
information.
shocked, but yeah, it was very funny. Like starting off watching this, and there's like, I'm like, this seems very much like The Nanny, and then as it progressed, I was just laughing a lot, even at moments that maybe weren't funny, just because I was like, this is Hannah's
It's just
childhood.
I watched this movie so many times. I'm pretty sure we had it like because it was a DVD in a $5 bin and my mom bought it and then she was like,
Fair.
I like this movie. And then we just watched it all the time. Like
Fran Drescher is charming. She really is, and I really appreciate her one-liners and just like
I always
her
wanted to do that.
yeah, like her just like corny humor. I don't know. There's something about her that I'm just a fan of. She's just got this way about her. There's just something
Mhm.
about Fran. I really like her.
She's a good comedic
But
actress. Like we
then
don't
again,
have
I'm
a
a
lot
huge
of
fan of The Nanny as well. Like that
yeah.
was a show that I used to watch all the time. So I don't know, but I watched this with my husband too, and he and I were laughing out loud at
Oh,
times. Like this,
good.
this was a fun movie to watch.
Everyone, go watch it before we dive in and spoil it because obviously you need to come in with fresh
Here's my thing:
eyes.
we'll never describe it as well as actually watching it will be for you. So this is going to be obviously full spoilers, but
Yeah. But
please
like you
watch this
do,
movie because
but
it's hilarious.
please go experience Timothy Dalton just growling through the entire movie and going like
Yeah.
this is also a movie that I would say getting into it, it's like a movie told in vignettes because there's not
Mhm.
really an overarching storyline other than maybe you should have democracy as long as it keeps you specifically in power.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was
It's
a weird. it was kind of a weird movie. And some of the things that are like thrown into like so what ends up happening is like Fran Drescher is like mentioned in the news or something or the paper
Yes.
as being
So
a
well, first of all, you can't discount the very important beginning
yes.
montage. The film opens with an animated sequence where there's a man looking for a
Mhm.
princess, and it's definitely Fran Drescher, and it's just animated with all these little like buddies and things. And she
Mhm.
wakes up and he's like, "Oh, you can be my princess and live in my castle." And she's like, "I have things to do. I
Sure.
can't be around and be." And then it like smash cuts to Joy Miller, which is her name in this, because you can't have Fran be Miss Fine in
Right.
this
She can't
movie.
be Fran.
So we go from this animated scene to her trying out for to be a makeup artist for
Hmm.
someone who just does the Powerball. And
Yes.
she does so much makeup on this woman and she doesn't get the job. And then we
Hmm.
like have to go over to Fran's parents' house to find out that she's unmarried and unwanted. And this is one of my favorite scenes where a dog just like pops out of nowhere with a cone on its like neck. And she goes,
Hmm.
"Mom, is he still licking himself?" And his mom and the mom goes, "Yeah, the vet says it's stress," and then screams in the dog's face, "What do you have to be stressful about?"
What do you have to be stressed about?
Yeah,
Yes,
and then
I love that.
it smash cuts to Fran and she goes, "I have no idea."
That makes me laugh because like I often and my dad often like makes comments like that about our dogs where he'll be like, "What? They have such a hard life." Oh my
Exactly.
gosh, like because they just, get to do whatever they want and sleep and play with toys all day.
Although my dog did miss us during our honeymoon and she did check
Oh,
our room every single morning to see if we had like come back during the night,
that's
which
crushing.
is heartbreaking. But then we also find out that Fran is I'm gonna call her Fran the entire time because I
Yeah,
can't
Joy.
remember
Well,
that
they
her name
actually
is
just
Joy
call her Joy
Miller.
Miller the
Yeah.
entire time, first and last name.
Yep.
Like, it's
Joy Joy
hilarious.
Miller. And they're all doing the worst accents you've ever heard. Uh,
Yeah, keep going. So I,
but
so what's his name finds her,
Yeah, Ira finds
Ira,
her because she's teaching beauty school. One of her students is smoking near the hairspray, and so he starts a fire.
like a
And
huge fire.
a huge fire because she accidentally like sprays hairspray on it as
Mhm.
well, and so it just travels. And then she saves
She
far
gets all the
too.
animals out of the cages,
She gets all the animals out, but like
but they're mostly rats, and it's like, oh no, there's already
there
so many rats in New York City.
there's so many rats and there's so many of them. Like it is a
Yes.
comical amount of animals that she saves, and I've
Yeah.
always wondered
I'm
about
okay with
it.
the animals being saved. I just did have that thought there. I was like, oh my gosh, there are now more rats free in New York City.
I'm fine with the animals being saved. I was confused at how many times she had to run in because by the time she gets out like the last ones, the firefighters have shown up. So we
At
are
that
to
point, they're just
believe,
like, this is hilarious to watch her scuttle in and out with those heels. Like,
yeah, like everyone's just watching her save all these animals. No one gets in to help. At one point, she
mhm.
asked the student who started the fire, and he goes, "I ain't saving no rats. Burn, baby, burn."
I like that kid.
He was great. I also loved it because she said, "Oh, honey, you can't smoke near the aerosol." And he turns around and he goes, "I am smoking." And just like all the smoke pours out of his mouth.
Blows over there. Yes.
Comedic gold, honestly. But then Ira Grushinsky, who's a diplomat from
Yeah, he's
Eastern
like an
Europe.
ambassador or something, right?
Yeah, he thinks she's a science teacher, so he tries to hire her as a tutor to four children for Boris Pachenko,
Who
uh,
is,
Slovakia's dictator. So she
yeah.
thinks she's teaching hairstyling. She thinks it's going to be a great gig. And again, like get more
And does not
information.
question at all. Just immediately is like, this sounds like a great opportunity. I'm going. And
There's
I'm
also
like, have you not read the news? You're not going you're going over to a dictatorship. Like
yeah.
this seems like you should ask more
Well, he
questions.
keeps
But
calling him a president, which as a child, I will go on the record that I did not realize he was a dictator. I thought he was a president who was just kind of mean and in charge
He
of lots
seems
of
to very
things.
much be styled after like Stalin.
Yes, he's very much Stalin. And so she thinks he's a president and she's just teaching the president's children hair. Again, there should have been a contract or some type of reading in this.
Yeah, the way that yeah, this is very much like you have to suspend your disbelief
Yes.
because it's hard to think that a woman who often is like very much with it in terms of like women gotta stick together, don't just be doing that or whatever. And then she like at the beginning, no questions at all, just decides to go over to this other country with this man she met on the street
Yep.
who was like, "You're a great teacher, come with me." And her parents are like, "I don't know if you should do this." And she's like, "I need to do it."
He also like stalks her. Like he's just like
Yes.
roaming the streets of New York looking for
Yep.
Joy Miller. And so he like they find out that she's not a science teacher because she's doing his hair in the car and he freaks out because he could be thrown in jail for bringing over a hair teacher and she's
Instead of a
ups
science tutor.
and
Yeah.
so they decide to kind of fake it until they make it. So she
Yeah, so she's
goes.
like trying to teach these three children, one of whom has the hots for her and is extremely inappropriate often. And
Look,
then another one who is like a toddler, which I'm like, why does
yeah.
he need to learn science?
Well,
But
also is
okay.
biting. I think she's supposed to be pseudo like tutor like of
That's
olden
well,
days where
and that's
you're
where
like a
it's like Sound of
caretaker.
Music-esque,
Yes.
where it's like, okay, this is where I'm very much like they wanted to make the Sound of Music, but also really loved the nanny.
So also Fran Drescher is the one who developed and pitched this concept apparently. It was to play homage to the musical The King and I. So
Okay.
out of all of the ones we've listed, The King and I was not one of them.
No, I was really expecting the Sound of Music
Yeah, me too.
because they
So
even make clothing
they make clothing out of
that matches.
like bedding or something. So
Yes,
yeah, I
similar to the Sound of Music.
no, but the children wake her up in the morning and then she's late to meet the dictator of
Mhm.
Slovakia and he like comes barging into her room and this is she's so charming in this. Like it's just
Yes.
so charming where she's like the lighting in here is horrible and of course I can put on fake eyelashes on a
Yeah.
street but I've never done it with these mirrors and he's like so angry at her. But like it's very funny watching this movie and realizing he's a dictator because she acts so out of pocket to someone who could just throw her in, I guess, the
I love that
prison
you keep
system.
saying and realizing that he's a dictator because
I
it
didn't realize when I was a
it
child.
felt very evident.
I know, but if you're watching it as a child and then you have like that brain, like, doesn't look like anything to me. Like that was very much the energy I went into it when I was what, like 7 watching this movie on repeat.
Amazing.
Um, and then just never questioning it as I cross stitched all of my art.
Oh,
Uh,
amazing.
but so like they end up going to breakfast, and she says like,
Mhm.
"Oh, it was so cute when the kids were over my bed in the morning," and he gets so angry to the point where
Yeah.
she's scared for the children and has to be like, "I mean, it would have been cute had they done
Yeah.
that, but totally inappropriate."
Well, and then it's like another moment too where they're like at opposite ends of the table and they move down to sit by him and stuff. And she's like really trying to kind of throughout the next few scenes of the movie, she's trying to like develop a relationship between
Mhm.
the children and their father.
Yeah. As she starts to develop a relationship with the dictator of Slovakia.
She like weirdly starts to develop feelings for him. And I will say I laughed a lot at Boris, the actor who portrays Boris, because it was, I think this is me also just like falling into like stereotypes of Russian people where if they're trying to portray him as a dictator, it was really taking me out of it how he would have these moments of like, but I am a good person who
Yeah.
is in love. And I'm just like, oh, what? Like, this is so hard to believe.
It is baffling how they fall in love watching this as an adult human with eyeballs. I'm just like, how
He
did my
injures
mom love
himself
this
and
movie?
she like helps him with a wound at one point
They
and
have a weird dinner where she hides the mayonnaise from him and he growls for mayonnaise and she's like, it's
I
bad for
want
your
the
cholesterol.
mayonnaise.
It's so
Who
strange.
knew that Slovetians loved mayonnaise so much.
This
That
fake
honestly
town.
seems like a Wisconsin thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this movie feels like they didn't do much research into Eastern European anything.
I mean, doesn't mayonnaise feel like Wisconsin or Illinois
Yes.
or Michigan? Like that, I'm not getting like Eastern
Usually
Europe
it's like you
vibes.
could do like sauerkraut or like a lot of mustard or anything like that, but they chose
Yeah.
mayonnaise because Hellman's had a deal.
Yes.
But like we also find out during this time, you mentioned Alec, who is his son,
Mhm.
who is hitting on her and like shows up with his shirt hanging open in her bedroom to like seduce her. He's
Mm.
15. It's icky, but
Yeah.
as a child, I also was obsessed with that actor because he played Robbie in Seventh Heaven and he was the bad boy and I loved that. So just so you
That's funny.
know, Hannah as a child was like, "Ooh la la, he's so charming and cute." And as an adult, I'm like, he's in this movie a lot less than I remember.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
it's a blink and you miss it part, but I was obsessed with him back then. He was the character who in Seventh Heaven tried to get married to sleep with him, and she punched him in the throat or something.
Oh,
It's like a Valentine's Day episode, and then he ends up being like one. He ends up living in the Camden house after he
here's
becomes
the thing,
unhoused.
Hannah. Seventh Heaven is a wild ride, and we could we could do so many
Laura's
deep
like,
dives on
we
that.
could
I'm
only
like, I
do
know
so
where this
many
is
deep.
going, but we will go on a roller coaster if
I
we start
know.
going down Seventh Heaven
Okay, but like one thing
rabbit
about Robbie
holes.
in Seventh Heaven, he takes Mary to a motel and he's like, my parents never got married. This is where I was conceived. This is where I want to have sex with you.
That's terrifying.
Wild,
That's
wild
terrifying.
moment. And she punches him in the throat, and she should for many reasons. But that
And here's
being
the thing, I think he may have been typecast because I'm getting those same vibes in Beautician and the Beast.
that's fair. It's so gross. Thinking about that. And then they like rehabilitate him in Seventh Heaven, which is a crazy thing to do.
Uh,
Um, But as one of my nephews once said, anything is
Seventh
possible through God.
Heaven. Oh my.
Recently that happened where someone was like, "Oh, is it?" My husband goes, "Well, it's impossible to do this." And one of my nephews goes, "Well, anything is possible through God." And he's like, "Well, you really owned me with that answer."
Well, I don't know how to reply.
Yep, that's we're good. So um anyway, we have Alec. He wants to be an artist, but he has to
Mhm.
follow in his dad's steps. Again, certain things where I'm like, young Hannah, why weren't you as like that's why I thought he was a king, because you have this child being like, I don't want to
Yeah.
run the country. I just want to do art. And he can't because dictatorships are also familial in many
Yeah.
cases. So we also find out that Katrina, who is the eldest daughter, is in love
Is
with
she,
a
am I wrong? Is this the girl from Mrs. Doubtfire?
yes, it's the girl from Mrs. Doubtfire,
Okay.
Lisa Jacob, uh, and she is in love with a political activist who wants democracy in this dictatorship.
And I'm not gonna lie, those scenes also were like taking me out because they were a little bit too comical. Like,
They're so broad, and
I-
it's also wild how unreactive they are to her being involved with a political dissenter in a dictatorship.
well,
Like,
and yeah,
if we're
she
to
just will like leave to go to these like places to meet him and everything, and I'm like, I don't know.
and then he like at one point gets arrested and she's screaming at the
Yes.
cops. And it's like this is actually an incredibly dangerous situation if we were
Hmm.
actually dealing with the realities of a movie. But because we're in Fran Drescher's head, it's all like ack. Like it's
It's all like,
wild.
don't worry about it, officer.
Like, she's with me. And then like the dad who is supposed to be like he also has wild swings where sometimes he's like
Mhm.
lock him up in the dungeon. Why is there a
Why
dungeon?
is there a
Why is there
dungeon?
no prison
Also,
system in this dictatorship? Again, why I thought he was a king. Like not to defend my younger self, but he did
I
give king
mean,
energy
here's
with
the
his
thing. There's so
actions.
much of this that is very much like Russian stereotypes and
Hmm.
like dictatorship stereotypes. I keep saying Russian because they're very much quote like coded
Yes.
as Russian. And I just feel like it does the movie a little bit of a disservice because
Hmm.
it's like you said, it keeps feeling fantastical to the point of like, yeah, this is some kind of monarchy or something,
Right.
or like a fantasy
And it would make
monarchy.
sense if it were just a monarchy. Like you could make it a straight monarchy, but for some reason they decided to like add way too many levels of realism and being like
Yes.
dictatorship. And like by the end of this movie, he will
Beauty
want
school.
democracy. Like, what? No, that's such a wild ride for this man who like is definitely keeping the people down and getting himself reelected through
I
like
feel
a
like maybe the
very
moral of the
bad.
story is that the nanny could bring world peace.
Yeah, I think so. She was the president of the Writers or the Actors Guild. So,
Yes,
you know what?
she
She's not
was.
wrong. She can bring negotiation to the table.
I think
Uh,
around this time too, she was like obviously extremely popular because of the nanny,
mhm.
but she made a lot of like most beautiful woman of
Yes.
the year and most beautiful woman like lists. And I don't know why, but that always like stands out to me because it's her because I want to say that like people are probably like typecasting her specifically because of her voice. And
Hmm.
so I don't know why, but I find that like kind of important that she was getting a lot of these like beauty call outs and shout outs for things. Even obviously she is very beautiful, but I feel like too with that voice, it's just like she's
Well,
very distinct.
I also know that like I think she did a lot for the Jewish community when she was coming up
Oh,
and
I'm
becoming
sure.
very popular because she was seen as an actual sex symbol in like a time
Hmm.
period where she does have like Jewish features and that was not
Hmm.
often seen as beautiful. So I think it was very cutting edge for someone, in the early 90s to come up and be
Sure.
like an openly like Jewish actress and a proudly Jewish actress.
Sure.
That's a huge part of The Nanny is the fact that she's Jewish. She talks about it. And I think that that was pretty new. So I do think she had like a lot of like people who loved her and she is a pretty progressive
Hmm.
woman. Like this movie
Hmm.
does fight for unions. She literally tells people to go on strike. So I
Yeah.
think she's actually a fascinating person when you actually like
Hmm.
move
Yep.
past the nanny of it all. I mean, the nanny is what like put her into the power that she is in today, and it's
Sure.
still
Yeah,
so
that really like
impressive.
catapulted her into popularity.
Right. But she is like an amazing person as a like
Hmm.
feature
Hmm.
of the 90s if you look at it, because you're right, she was making like most beautiful list of a lot of stuff. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I'm not one to be like, oh, like beauty standard societal standards for beauty should always be followed, but I do feel like she does kind of like buck some of those standards.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
why I think she's interesting.
Yeah. Well, and Boris finds her interesting. What a leading man
Boris.
name, Boris. At least it's not Paul Atreides.
No notes.
No notes. So Boris starts telling her that he wants to change his reputation as a quote unquote beast. Hey, that's the name of the film.
Well,
Among Western nations. And it's like, it's a good way to do that? Not being a dictator.
here's the thing.
Like,
He is so quick to confide in this woman,
yeah.
which amazes me. Like the
Well,
fact that he's willing to like tell her things and also like just be like, how do you feel? How should I bring about democracy in the country? I'm like,
well,
what?
and that
Even if
is.
she was just a science teacher, I'm shocked that you're putting so much trust in her.
And also like it's definitely the white man version of progressivism where he's like, how do I bring democracy to my country but still remain in power because
Yes.
I'm the only one who could possibly do this.
Yes.
And the point of hiring her, they do say, because this is a film and they did write a
Mhm.
script, so there are layers. Was that she was supposed to be a Western teacher to teach the children Western culture,
Mhm.
so he keeps going to her to be like, you're the only Westerner here because our borders have got to be as closed as possible in
Yes.
this dictatorship. So she's the only one he can talk to, but he does confide in her way too often. And then she
Yeah,
gives
it's shocking. And this is how they become closer because he's like asking her like all these deep questions and like, oh,
taking
okay.
her to see the citizen because she's like, well, get to know the people. And she also gives him the worst advice I've ever heard, which is shave your mustache because that man should have never shaved his mustache.
Well, he
Because
looks exactly like Stalin with the mustache.
but here's the thing, he looks so old when he shaves it. Like there has got to be a very big age gap between the two of them,
You know
and
what?
it is
Let's find out.
stark.
Timothy Dalton,
He's 78
78,
and she's
and
67. So there's an
yeah, 11
11-year
years.
age difference. And this
But
came out like
honestly, like, no offense, Timothy Dalton, but he just kind of looks old.
he does look old. And it, like
Like
just shaving the
I'm not saying
mustache.
he's not ugly. And I
No.
do think like there's times I prefer him without the mustache because it was
Oh.
too much Stalin for
That's fair.
me. I couldn't get
I
over the Stalin of it all.
hated how scraggly his face looked after that mustache came off. I was like, that was hiding something very important, sir. Please don't do that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think it was just like that was like a turning point for me where I was just like, yes, now they do have to redo all of his portraits and everything. And I was like,
I
because
love when they're just
they paint
painting
over
over the
his mustache.
mustache.
Yeah, that was probably not how you correct art like that, but it
I
was
don't
very
know.
funny.
No
But
notes.
I think for me, it was just like I preferred the mustache coming off just because I was just seeing a little too much Stalin, and that was like the turning point where it was like, okay, now the dictator's moving towards
Now
democracy.
he's becoming a president instead of a
He actually
dictator.
is a president now. Haha, that's what the difference is mustaches.
Obviously. And so he also like
And
during a
also like intense combat training in the case of Putin, but
this is also a moment where we have like little vignettes of her like going to watch him do a speech to the country where he just like screams and raises his arms.
or she's just like giving him slight tips and
Yeah.
or she's like interacting with people and she's just incredibly charming and they're like, "Oh, why don't you take some notes from her? She's really
Uh-huh.
got it figured out."
I do love this though, because this is a direct pull from the trailer where she walks up to this crowd of people where no one
Yes.
asked her to be there, and she just raises her arms up and everyone starts cheering. And she goes, I always wanted to do that.
See, that's the type of stuff where it's just like it doesn't it shouldn't be that funny, but she's so charming that
I
I'm just
know.
like, damn you, Fran Drescher. Why can't
Well,
I have that type of appeal?
and then they go to this factory trip where like one of the people is like, man, him being here is gonna like put us back on our production
Yeah,
by
like
like half a
them having to give a
day.
tour and everything.
And she goes, well, at least you're gonna rack in the overtime. And he was like, what's overtime? So then
She has to explain unions.
the dictator is like, how dare you tell them about trade unions? I don't want to pay people I don't want to pay people what they're
A
worth.
fair wage? What?
And so it's wild. She's
Yeah, and
also
that's when she tells him to strike.
yeah, and she tells him to go on strike. Good for her. She also arranges a secret meeting between Katrina and her boyfriend in his cell. Oh, I said that the son's name was Alec. The boyfriend's name is Alec. That's
Okay.
on me.
Okay.
But she
Also, that
goes,
boyfriend looks a lot older than her too, but
yeah. I
it
honestly
is
like
what it is.
you could
He is
that
16 going on 17 and she's
she
17
doesn't
going on
know what to
18 or
do.
whatever.
Um,
They're all around 17 apparently.
he was a very interesting person to hire, but he did what he was supposed to do, which was sit in this random dungeon that shouldn't exist in 1997. Um, and
Just the idea of there being a dungeon there that he has to go in is very scary.
it's so strange. And during this time, Fran is like, "Hey, could you let your daughter's political boyfriend out of jail?" And he's like, "No, I can't let people try to overthrow my government. I'm
Show
willing."
weakness.
Yeah, I'm willing to like shave my mustache, but letting a
Facial hair
political
is one
prisoner
thing,
go.
but now you're crossing a line.
And so then she finally gets him to agree that he's going to do it, and they have a beautiful ball. Uh, and there's like a random
And
prime
Fran's
minister.
just like in charge of the whole thing. And there's a moment in this too where she's preparing for the ball. Isn't this where Ira like says something to her about like you can't reveal like he knows obviously that she's not a
Yes.
science teacher, and some of the other people have found out too, I think, that she's not a science
Yeah,
teacher. But
maybe.
wait, no, I think she's told him at this point, hasn't she?
No, she hasn't told the king yet because
Not the king. No.
not the king. Sorry, I'm always gonna call him the king.
Stalin
But
cosplay man.
Stalin cosplay. She's not told Stalin cosplay. But like it's a weird thing where they're keeping it secret, but people are starting to like love her. But also the evil villain of this movie, who I've not mentioned yet because he's just standing behind the king glaring for
Mhm.
most of the dictator
Yes.
glaring for most of the movie. Is the prime minister. Why
Yes.
is the prime minister the evil villain? And why is there a
Because
prime
Putin
minister with this? Like, it's so strange. So he
was
finds,
Putin the prime minister around this time? Like this
oh, you're
seems
probably
very
right. It's
much
Putin.
it seems very much like Putin and Stalin.
Yeah, you're right. It's Putin and Stalin. So, Putin finds out that she's not a real teacher. Like, he threatens her, and he ends up being able to tell this to the dictator, and he changes his mind about letting Alec go. And they have a huge fight, and she quits because he won't let go of a political prisoner because he's a
Mhm.
literal dictator.
Yep.
And then then we have like this moment of like sad breakup, and we find out that the prime minister has been signing death sentences in the dictator's name.
Mhm.
And so he like casts him out, strips him of his duty, and then he goes and he gets Joy back in New York City. And he gets her back by saying he freed the boy and he's going to hold free elections in Sylvetia. And
Mhm.
she said, "You had me at you let him go," or something like that. And I was like,
Yeah.
I actually think you need all of that information, Fran Drescher. I think you need
Yikes.
him to give the full list. You shouldn't be your bar should be higher for dictators, ma'am. And then, happily ever after with Timothy Dalton and his non-mustached face. S-
Yikes.
So it's not surprising to anyone that this movie received very poor reviews and was nominated for a Golden Raspberry Award. Um,
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm
I just had to look up here. Like I cannot find it, but I'm assuming that Putin was maybe inspired by Stalin. But
okay.
I want to say that the prime minister is like coded as Putin.
Yeah, I feel like you're right, just based
I
on the
I
history and
don't
the
think that
time.
I don't think these two met, as
No.
far as I can tell. But I want to say that they're both coded as those real life historical figures.
Mm. There are so many people oh my God, I love looking at like this weird Wikipedia page because like themes, it's a juxtaposition of colorful American into a dark, oppressive looking castle. And it's like there's a literal dictator in the background of that though. What a wild time. He does have comparisons to Joseph Stalin.
Mhm. Mhm.
And a lot
Well,
of
he looks
people
exactly like him, so obviously. And I just looked up, obviously, I am terrible with world history. People will be like, shut up, stupid person. But Stalin died when Putin was like a year old. So
oh, oops.
I
Well,
just had
and
to look
then
this up because I'm like, I made this comparison and now I'm gonna feel stupid if I don't.
you're fine. I mean,
No.
he was supposed to be Stalin, and I do feel like this guy is supposed to be Putin, so you're
I
not
really feel like
wrong.
it's coded as Putin.
Yes. And so, I do love this. Some critics have cited The Beautician and the Beast as an adaptation of the fairy tale Beauty and the Beast. You
I
think?
missed that a little more.
I
Like they
mean,
just kept calling him the Beast. I
yeah. I mean, he was
don't.
just growling a lot. So,
Yeah, like okay, weird.
and she changes him through making him remove some hair. So, the comparisons are there. But it says,
Oh, so that's the transformation.
mhm. And then they said, well, others believe the nanny was its inspiration. Why would the inspiration be a television show she was already on?
I'm telling you, like at this time, people were so into crossovers and things like that.
Yeah.
It makes complete sense. How many episodes of The Golden Girls had like other popular TV shows at the time? Like the
Well, yeah,
characters were coming on, tons of them.
not where the nanny is also the character in this movie with a different name in a feature film.
I think it makes sense that they were just like, you know
Okay.
what's really popular? The nanny. You know what we
The
should do?
thing
Make
she's
the
already
nanny in
on.
Russia.
I mean, that's what they did. It's a wild time, and coming back to this as an adult is one of the craziest things I could have ever done.
Oh, I here's my thing. I thought this was early 90s. This is late 90s.
This is
Shocking.
97. This is
Shocking.
97, Laura. Uh
I was thinking this. I was giving it a little more credit and thinking 91, 92.
no.
Shocking that this is later.
It's also why I mean this movie was made for $16 million and only made 11 million, so it was a
Hmm.
bust.
Hmm.
But like it had pretty decent actors on it. Like it
Hmm.
had Fran Drescher. It had like Timothy Dalton's a well-known
I was to
actor
say
like in
that
British
that's a
media.
common name. Like people know of
Yeah.
him.
And it
And
had
some of the
like
kid actors, like we mentioned, things that they'd been in. So,
right. Well, and I also remember this movie like meant a lot because they have like a one-off of like a daughter who's kind of chubby and like she's not
Mhm.
in the movie at all, but Fran like teaches her like, "Hey, people love all sorts of women." And it's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice." And she changes the lives of like these four children in a positive way by like teaching them to talk to people and teaching them to talk to their dad and teaching a woman that you can love a political prisoner and that's okay because your dad's a dictator.
Oh my.
But
Oh my. Do you think that Timothy Dalton was the right cast for this?
no, I always hated him as a cast. I did
Yeah.
not think he was well cast in this.
Yeah, I also question that. And especially when we started getting into more of like me mentioning like, oh yeah, I was kind of taken out of it by him like learning to love.
The entire point of the movie.
Yeah, the
I
entire point of
didn't
the movie.
buy it.
But when he has to like act that out, he really dropped the like dictator of it all. And again, this is me falling into stereotypes, but it was almost a little too cheesy where
Yeah.
it was just like, I don't know what these feelings are. And he would almost like the line delivery was almost like a little too cheesy at times that I was just
Well,
like,
and watching it as an adult, like the growling and the like, this is how I show power. When like you're an evil
I want the
dictator,
mayonnaise.
yeah, like it doesn't make that much sense. And I think he was like, well, I'm supposed to be the beast, so this is also what I'm supposed to do. Oh, and this makes sense. He was cast like in 1996 and Drescher said she initially imagined it as Kevin Kline. And Kevin Kline
Oh, okay.
makes sense because he's like you could see him as kind of a wacky dictator. Like
Here's my thing, Hannah. Kevin Kline, was he not in the Beauty and the Beast live action?
he was, you're correct. So this is the role that got away from him. But like Kevin Kline
Uh,
was in some wacky movies too, because I also love the
mhm,
movie French Kiss, which is Kevin
mhm,
Kline with a
mhm,
French accent and falling in love with Meg Ryan, who's afraid of
mhm.
planes. Um, and I think that is like I could see him doing this role and being a little bit more like Fish Called Wanda about it, where he's
Sure.
zanier and he's a weird dictator and he's
I
sitting there
kind of would have
growling.
preferred Kevin Kline, I think,
Yeah.
but maybe that's, I don't know. That's neither here nor there because it didn't happen. But
Yeah. I just feel like Fran Drescher got this greenlit because she was Fran
yeah.
Drescher and then like had to hire some man to do it and then he wasn't Fran Drescher so everyone was like I am not charmed by this so
Yeah, I
yeah
don't
I
know
don't
how I
know
feel about
he was
that.
pretty badly cast. I thought the kids were fine
The
for
kids are
like a
fine,
B
but
movie
you know what?
like
The kids are fine, and honestly, I think that those kids are fairly good actors. Um,
yeah
they were doing a lot of other stuff too at that time. It seems like, um, but they didn't have super major roles.
no
It was very much these two, Drescher and Dalton, that were
it's
monopolizing the screen. And Ira was in it a lot. And also her parents had enough
yeah.
speaking parts that I was just like, okay, you two.
Well, also this movie is like super fast. I think it clocks
Hmm.
in at like 83 minutes. I don't think it is like very long whatsoever. And as a child, I remember the kids a lot more than where they're at in this movie. And I think it's because like you're told a lot of it. Like I think this movie is not well written because a lot of it times you're like being told stuff. Like you're being told the kids love her. You're being told that she's a good role model for them. You're being told that she inspired the son to become an artist, but you're not really like seeing it. You just kind of have
I
to
mean, you see
believe.
some of it through
They
some
have
of
like
that where they're like
one
very inspired
conversation.
by her, where she's like, they're kind of playing the music in the background and she's doing some of these things like in the prep or whatever. And he's looking over fondly, like, wow, my kids love her and all of the country loves her. And look at how much influence she has over
Oh, sorry,
people.
it's 107 minutes, but like it's still not that
Hmm.
long. It's pretty fast and it has a lot of like background material and yeah, I don't know. It's a wild time.
It's also just like one of those movies, again, where it's just like, you know what will save the world? America. We need more America everywhere.
Especially in just blanket statement Eastern Europe.
Yes. Like, you
Like,
know what will solve Europe? America.
it's so
And I
wild.
think we're learning
That is not
no,
true.
no, America, stop.
take a step back, ma'am. Um,
Oh.
yeah, it's a weird time. This it was also written by a man called Todd Graff, who also wrote Joyful Noise, the Dolly Parton movie.
Mhm.
So yeah, that tracks. I feel like this movie, like, it's weird to watch a movie like this in 2024 because it
Yeah.
has all the energy of a Netflix movie. Like if you and I saw this on Netflix, we would not question it whatsoever. It does boggle my mind that this movie got a theatrical release.
Yes.
Like
That is shocking.
it had a box office and
Hmm.
we don't get to spend that money anymore making like $16
Whoops.
million
$60 million
films.
dollars. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
$60
gosh.
million film that's just like a wild time and just like The Nanny revisited if we're really thinking about it.
And you know what's crushing is the Country Bears didn't even get a theatrical release. The Country Bears was straight to video.
Famously has
And that
Christopher Walken
was,
in it.
yeah, that was a masterpiece. So, like, shocking.
I mean, I sure remember many parts of it.
I
So,
know.
yeah,
Country Bear Hall is ruined.
it is a very specific look back in time. And I understand you saying, like, I really thought this was early 90s and the fact that it was
Yeah.
late 90s.
Doesn't it feel like early 90s, even with the production style, like the cinematography of it?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I do want to late 90s movies. I'm trying to think of like other late 90s movies because I feel like those movies are a lot older than we think about them. Like they're not
I know,
as.
I know, but I feel like just the style of it, it just really reminded me of like a movie that was early 90s, maybe even late 80s. You know what I mean?
That's
And I
fair.
guess The Nanny was around 95-ish, so it had to be within that time range. If The Nanny was popular, it makes sense
Right.
that this would be 97. Um,
But this was the time of like She's All That and yeah,
Full
never
House
never been
and
kissed.
Home Alone.
And yeah. So like there are some wild swings in this movie, but I think that is the biggest thing of like watching it as an adult, seeing that this was
Mhm.
created in 1997 when we had movies like have theatrical releases like this, that like that's wild to think about. Yeah.
I feel
What
like
did
there may I don't recall a ton of, but then again, I was obviously a child. I don't recall tons of movies that I remember like going straight to or VHS.
Yeah, that's true. Well, there were ones that came, but a lot of them were like children's movies.
Yes, yes.
But like there were movies that got pulled out of theaters really fast. I think like where
Hmm.
they would be released and then they would just go straight to video. Um,
Yeah, I don't know if I recall that, but again, I was
yeah,
like 5, so
that's fair. I mean, how dare you not remember the
I was in
beauty of this
kindergarten
movie?
when this movie
You
came
had
out. So
other things to worry
really,
about.
I was just trying to learn how to write my name. Like I was really focused on that. So
Yeah. I don't know. It's a strange movie. Laura, what did your husband think about it?
he laughed a lot.
Oh, really? He
Yes.
was. This is also a sweet spot for him though, because like, Laura's husband like is the same age as one of my sisters, and I do
Mhm.
feel like
Yeah,
these
we
were
have an age
like,
gap. So this
yeah,
is a very like I'm trying to think how old he would have been at this time. So he would have been 13.
yeah,
So yeah, this would have been like he would have been like 8th grade-ish when this movie came out. So yeah, that would have been
a little bit more of a nostalgia pull for
yeah, a little
him.
bit of a nostalgia thing for him. And I don't think he ever had seen it. I
I
just by
doubt
like
he would
his
have with
reaction
his
to it
family of
because
all
he
sons.
he seemed fairly surprised by the things that happened. It wasn't like, oh yeah, Fran Drescher did that again. So- but we both laughed a lot. He enjoyed it as well. I think really Fran is just like so fun as an actress that it's hard not to like this performance if you like Fran Drescher.
Yeah. I will say, people, like, if you haven't gone and watched it, like I told you at the beginning of this, like, just watch The Nanny, which is a better Beautician and the
The
Beast.
Nanny is better, but I do think this movie is fun. I don't know that I would be like never watch this. I think it's fun. A la like Country Bears, I think is really fun. Like maybe that's going to turn people off that I'm recommending those two
Those
movies.
two movies in a row. No, because I think there are certain, I mean, Laura recently heard from someone that they love our Gremlins episode where we just talked about
Yeah.
Gremlins. And so
Mhm.
there are certain movies like this where it's like, this one is so strange. but
The
also
Gremlins
it's
has like wide acclaim though. This
yeah,
movie I had never heard of until you mentioned it. So I do love finding these little gems like this where it's just
it,
like, yeah, I can totally see how this would have its own niche following of
yes.
people that had this VHS and were watching it all the time and just
Except
laughing
the niche
along with
was my specific family.
Stalin cosplay.
Like, it is strange to know that like this movie was real big in my house
Mhm.
specifically, and I've never heard anyone
You
who
guys
like
were
recognizes
all
this
about
movie.
taking down dictatorships and starting unions.
We just, I mean, I was a union
Hannah's
household. You are
dad
correct. My
does not
dad,
have a mustache.
he does not, he grew one at one point in
He
time.
shaved it.
He did shave it and he did not
Pro-democracy.
look good with a mustache. So,
That was
we
when
are
he
pro.
dropped the dictatorship and really went
Yeah.
pro-democracy.
But yeah, this is a really weird flashpoint of like movies I specifically grew up with older siblings where I also feel like that's probably why this movie was really popular. It was kind of hard for like certain movies to be played in the household when I was in the room. And so if you had one that was like a sweet spot of this
I
that was
mean, it's
like
probably PJ,
funny,
isn't it?
yeah, and comedic enough, like you could throw this like there's no sex in this movie. They're not like
Hmm.
and so like when you're 5 and your sisters are 13 to 17, like having these types of movies is always helpful because like, oh yeah, Hannah
And this
can
is maybe
watch
another reason
this.
why, like, I feel like you had greater exposure to movies of this type than I did just because you had older siblings.
Hmm.
Whereas I was still probably watching Aladdin for the 4,000th time.
I mean, I
Like,
watched those too, but yeah, I did watch a lot of like
yeah,
specific.
I feel like younger children especially start to like younger siblings, I should say, younger
Yeah.
siblings start to like get exposed to types of media that
Well,
are
because it's like
maybe
movie
older for them
night.
just because, they have their older siblings who
Hmm.
exactly are doing movie night or you're doing a family movie night or like something like that. Or even just like, you've got a high school sibling who's like, I'm not watching Aladdin.
Yeah.
So,
Well, like that was always the story about 10 Things I Hate About You is because like I was a naive child. So like I watched so much of it and then my parents would be like, close your eyes. And so I'd do it. So I remember specifically 10 Things I Hate About You. I'd seen so much of that movie, but I never got to see the scene where the kid had a dick drawn on his face because my
oh,
parents were
really?
like, Hannah can't see a cartoon penis be
Uh-huh.
drawn. And so like for the longest time, I just like kept my eyes closed during that scene.
I
And then
love
it
how
was like
obedient you were.
and then at like
That's
14, I was like, oh,
hilarious.
that's what a dick is. And like it took me way too long to figure out what was going on. And like I was incredibly obedient because like that was what you like
That's amazing.
if you start a kid at 5 doing that, a lot of times they're like, well, this is just normal. And then you meet like children who like were told that when they were like 12 and they didn't
Uh-huh.
see it before then. And they're like, of course I looked. And I was like, no, I just followed directions. Like these were the boundaries set, so they are the ones I followed. So like Pretty Woman, there's a scene where she's like getting naked on the piano. My parents were like, "Shut your eyes," and I would. So I've seen a lot of like specifically rom-com movies that
Hmm.
no one's ever heard of. Like, oh my gosh, there's one called The Truth About Cats and Dogs. Um,
Yeah, see, you have seen so many of these movies that I'm like, nope, never.
Truth About Cats and Dogs is a 1996 movie starring, you would never guess in a million years, Janine Garofalo and Uma Thurman.
Okay.
Um, and again, it's one of those movies where it's like, in this movie, you have to believe that Janine Garofalo is not attractive. Like, she's not a pretty person because she lives next door to Uma Thurman. And yes, Uma Thurman is gorgeous, but also, like,
So
just
is that
because
how we rate our own attractiveness? Like if we have a really attractive neighbor, we're like, well, instantly ugly.
apparently, because like in this movie, it's like, well, she's short with brown hair, so she's a real uggo. And
Hmm.
she has a radio show called The Truth About Cats and Dogs where she gives advice about cats and dogs. Because, 90s were a time where you could
Yes.
have niche jobs and still get paid. And then like this person
I
falls in
mean, in rom-coms, they're still having niche jobs
that is true. But then this
or on any kind
guy
of show about real estate.
quote unquote falls in love with her and she gives the description of her room her like next door neighbor and so then the next door neighbor has to Cyrano him and pretend to date him and it's a very strange movie.
Yeah, I mean, all of that fits. I
Yeah.
I do feel like though this movie specifically, Beautician the Beast, like again, not shocked that this was something that you were watching because like just from what I know of your movies that you were watching
Sarah
growing
Plain
up.
and
I'm like,
Tall.
these things just make sense. Like I was not shocked, and it made me enjoy the movie a little more, just knowing
Good.
like, oh yeah, this obviously was being played in Hannah's household. Like,
Honestly, people, if you're ever interested in Hannah just having like random movie watch parties, I do this quite frequently with my sister-in-law where I just make her watch like double features with me, including
perfect.
Coyote Ugly and and other such films that no one has ever seen before but me. We did Crossroads and Coyote Ugly, the
I feel like
Sabrina.
those are quite popular films.
Yeah, those are popular. We've also done more niche ones. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Beautician and the Beast was a deep
That's
cut.
very niche. I Because like some of them you mentioned, I'm like, oh yes, if I have heard of these or listened to a podcast episode on these, like they can't be that out there.
Yeah, that's true.
But
What
this
about
one is out there.
this one's out there. It's a very specific niche one. And I do hope that someone watched it and laughed and laughed and laughed about it because
I
that
hope
would
that
bring me
everyone's on
joy.
eBay finding this movie.
And I hope there's just like a wide expanse of like Fran Drescher getting
You know
a
what? Wouldn't that be
check.
hilarious if a bunch of people just like Fran Drescher gets her royalties check
It's
and it's
just
just she's just like, what the heck, Beautician and the Beast? Like
why is this like why
seriously?
did I get $10 from
You
this
people are
month?
weird. Like, come
Who
on.
who's renting this on Amazon?
Like
But everyone go Pokemon Go to Amazon and
Pokemon
get this
Go.
movie. Um and watch it and tell me what you think over on our Discord or on our Blue Sky or on our Instagram because we're over on those. And you can talk to us about our Christmas movie choice of the year and why
Yes.
this was definitely a Christmas movie, I promise.
I mean, there's flowers. I think if we honestly added a little red and green to the movie poster, it's believable.
I think I will be adding a little bit of red and green to the
Perfect.
movie poster.
Some mistletoe right
Some
above the
mistletoe,
two
some
of them in the
holly.
middle of it.
Like, it'll be beautiful,
Yeah,
everyone.
Canva that, Hannah. Like
I will
I
be Canva that. I will Pokemon Go to Canva and do that. So, yeah. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, definitely check out some of our other previous Christmas
yes.
episodes. Like I said, Gremlins is a very popular one. Or check out
We
any of
also
our.
covered Batman last year.
We did cover Batman last
Merry
year.
Christmas, Mr. Wayne.
Merry
And
Christmas, Mr.
that
Wayne.
honestly is a Christmas movie
That
because it
is a
takes
Christmas
place at
movie.
Christmas time. Gremlins is a Christmas movie too.
Gremlins is a Christmas
Everyone
movie.
just forgets about Gremlins.
Honestly, it became one of my favorite films, and I do watch it
I
every year now.
love that. I love that I exposed you to that because it's one of my sister's favorite movies, and it
It's a
just
good
makes me
one.
laugh that she loves it so much.
It's a good
It's wild.
movie. Um, my dad died via chimney. So yeah, and then join us next week as we do our final wrap up for the year,
Yes.
guys. There's only
End of
like
year wrap up.
two more Wednesdays, and this is one of them. So you are
Yeah.
welcome.
So actually, our end of the year comes out on Christmas Day.
Merry Christmas, Master
So
Wayne.
Merry Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you've enjoyed everything we've done this year. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. We have a 5-star over on Spotify that we really appreciate of people who've been rating us. I got our Spotify wrapped today,
Cool.
and our listenership was up by like quite a bit this year.
Cool. Cool. Cool.
And our most downloaded episode was the first Harry dressed in, a shock to no one. But it's just really good. We've expanded to different countries. We've had new listeners come on, and we really appreciate every single one of you. So
Yeah, and
if you
thanks so
could,
much for listening. And we really appreciate if you'd share with a friend just
Mhm.
by word of mouth or via socials, however you do that.
Follow us at OWWR Pod or check out ourpod.com where I had one of the best interviews ever up this week. Paul Austin Arduin, he is an amazing author. He does a mystery series and he's actually a USA Today bestselling indie author, which is pretty
Cool.
hard. And he has some great recommendations on how to market your books and podcasts to listen to and resources. So everyone, please
That's
go
awesome.
check him out because I think it's always helpful to learn. I know we have a lot of like
Yes.
sci-fi fantasy fans who listen to us, but I think you can
I think a lot of aspiring writers are
Mhm.
tuning in too, though.
Exactly. So definitely go listen to what he has to say because he's amazing. He's part of my writing group and he's so helpful and welcoming and warm. Like he's just the best. So make sure you're
That's
going to
awesome.
read that as along with some of Laura's Sphinx reviews that were posted this
Yes.
week.
Yes.
So we have some content for all of y'all. And like I said, please join our Discord. We love talking over there.
Mhm.
I will be a little bit more active now that my wedding and honeymoon and everything is done. Thank God. I never have to plan a wedding again. So, we're just really
Yet.
happy. No, thank you. I'm done. That would be very sad for me, but I appreciate everyone. Thanks for another year. And then join us next week for our roundup of favorite things that we read, watched,
Yes.
and enjoyed this year. Bye.
Bye.